and the second part was Advanced Agile. Today we would be learning more about Scrum. So the speaker today is again Anushree Verma. She is a Scrum Master, Agile coach from Capgemini. More about her introduction would be in the slides follow. Before that, we really wanted to have some kind of poll, very quick poll. So I would request you to go through it. Yeah, so I think it is almost 50-50. Some of you have attended both the sessions, or you have not attended any. So thanks for that. Anushree, are you able to see the results? Okay. Just one quick next poll. And again, I would request you to attempt it. So 67 people have voted. I would request all to vote. I'll keep it open for another 5 seconds. Okay, thank you. So the good thing is most of the people who are attending the webinar today have heard about Scrum. Specifically, we had advertised it as Agile series. We had not really advertised it as some kind of a Scrum series or whatever. So which is good. I'm just now getting some messages that people are just logging in. So maybe we can quickly take a couple of other poll questions. And these are just fun questions. We know by that, you know, that who is doing what and things like that. So that is the whole idea. Just we try to close it very, very fast. Do you think Agile means no planning? So if you think that Agile is like, you know, you go on, you start the project and project goes on and on, is it like that or not? So 100% have voted. So that is very great, and I'm just displaying those results. So almost 67% people say that they are sure that Agile is not planning. Agile means planning indeed, and Agile also means that you have to spend a certain amount of effort in terms of getting it done. One more fun question, and since we are really spending this time because at least 3-4 people have still SMS me saying that they are interested in attending the webinar and we should wait for another moment. So all these questions we had created initially when we started this series. We thought at the last juncture, why not present it? So the question is very simple. It means that in Agile, do we know or we are not aware about the final product? So typically we start with some purpose in mind with no idea of the end product, and we go on building as requirements come. And I think 83% have voted, and all have voted resoundingly no. And you're 100% right. So when you do Agile form of development, it does not mean it is some anarchy and nobody is aware what is going to happen in the project. It is just that you have a certain end use in mind and you have certain kind of flexibility in mind and you move ahead. So it is 11:07. Just one more question for the day, and this is a serious question. This will help us maybe plan our future webinars. So please answer it very, very seriously. This is the last question before we start the webinar. So I think earlier ones were fun and easy, so people quickly voted. Now, like, the voting percent is still only 50%. So 100% have voted, and the results are again displayed for you. So there are 0% students, and there are 0% learners for life and others, and prefer not to say. So people are attending this webinar with the idea of either you want to learn Agile and you want to learn Scrum and you feel it is useful. 33% feel they are in a business role, and however still they want to learn Scrum because it may be useful. Excellent. So thank you again for attending this webinar on this weekend. My name is Ajit Joshi, and welcome to you on behalf of Computer Society of India. This webinar series was a three series webinar where we actually covered for you the entire Agile series. We covered we covered for you under the Agile. First two sessions were on introduction to Agile. The next session was Advanced Agile, both conducted on Saturdays. Today we are meeting to discuss Scrum. So we would be discussing Scrum today. Scrum is very popular Agile framework. As we come to what is this all webinar series about? So here, apart from the Agile series which happen on Saturday, we are doing 4 digital marketing seminars starting from 1st of April. So 1st, 2nd, 6th and 9th, we are conducting series of digital marketing webinars, and some of you who are interested in digital marketing, I would request you to attend. So the immediate upcoming sessions are on Agile or on digital marketing. Who is today's speaker? So today's speaker is Anushree Verma. Those who have attended before, she's a known voice. She's a technical delivery manager and Agile coach at Capgemini, Pune. She's a certified Scrum Master and she's a trainer from PMI. She's a certified Agile professional, ITIL certified and whatnot. Today she will take us through Scrum. So with this, I would, apart from that, Milita would be is attending this as the organizer, and she would be also trying to help Anushree conduct this webinar. So I'm changing the screen to Anushree. And Anushree, are you there?
Yes. Is my screen visible?
Not yet. Yeah, it is now visible.
Okay, good morning everyone. Welcome to this webinar where I'll be covering the fundamentals of Scrum. Scrum is the latest buzzword in the market today. So if you see the stats of job opening in today's market, you will realize that more than 70% of the software development companies are looking for candidates with Agile skills. So having a Scrum certification adds value to your profile and also gives you an edge over the other candidates during the job interview. And one more report by Global Knowledge Result, it states that Scrum certification is one of the topmost 15 certification in today's market. But Scrum is actually not only restricted to software industry. This method can be successfully applied in various domains such as manufacturing, marketing, education, operations, and many more. So let's see what Scrum is all about. So today I'll be covering this, these following points in the agenda today. I'll be giving you an introduction of Scrum, the whole life cycle of Scrum. Then there are some principles on which the Scrum resides. And then finally the 3 main components of Scrum, that is the Scrum Team and the roles, and then the Scrum Artifacts and the various events or ceremonies which we follow in the Scrum Framework. So many people confuse themselves into thinking that Agile is all about Scrum. Actually, no. Agile is it's a mindset, it's a set of values. So it can be treated as an umbrella as whole, under which various frameworks or methodologies come under that. For example, Crystal, Scrum, Lean, XP, and whatnot. So you have to pick up the framework or the process which actually suits your project. For example, Lean is mostly suited for manufacturing companies. And Scrum is one of the most popular one. There are some very good reasons of applying Scrum. The most important one being that it improves communication thus leading to the highly quality of product and giving a proper value, delivery value to the customer. You have continuous feedback from the customer. So these are some of the top 10 reasons to use Scrum. Now Scrum, this name was actually originated from the game rugby, which is very similar to American football. Here in the game, the team, they take the ball from one end of the field to another field in small increments or intervals, but by working together. So this similar concept is applied in Scrum. So if you see here, you have the team who is working together. They take the ball together. So this Scrum, it was first published in 1995, and up till now the Scrum has been adopted by various amount of software development companies around the world. So it is recognized as the most applied framework for agile software development, and there have been around more than 1,000 books which has been published on Scrum. So these are the following principles on which the Scrum resides. The first one is, it's a time-boxed event. Everything in Scrum is time-boxed. So if you commit to one particular time, you have to abide to that particular period of completion of that event. For example, if you say, okay, now the sprint is supposed to be for 2 weeks, you have to abide for 2 weeks of a time frame. You can't simply extend to it to 3 weeks or so. So time box actually helps in adhering to the commitments and schedule in the team. So this is one of the most important principles of Scrum. Then the second principle is, you have to have small team. The Scrum guidelines states that the team should be so small that they are cross-functional, they can work together, and they are preferably co-located, that they are seated together. So having a small team helps in managing the whole team together, and then taking care of the ownership, and the commitments are easily catered to. And finally, the third principle is incremental deliveries. So you deliver small pieces of work in shorter intervals. So a small delivery is made at the end of each iteration. But before I go ahead, let me explain one more thing in Scrum. We have this word called as sprint. Sprint is nothing but iteration. Iteration and sprint are one and the same. It is a time box period where the team works together to finish some working software. So it is actually not a phase like in your traditional model, traditional waterfall model, you have one phase of development and the next phase of testing. It's nothing like that. You have to complete the whole phase in the sprint. So during the sprint, the team works together on a requirement and finishes that in totality. So you just don't complete the development in sprint, or you just don't complete the QA or the testing. You complete the whole totality of that requirement, starting from requirement gathering to development to the end, to the testing. And Scrum guidelines say that we should keep the duration of sprint in the range of 1 to 4 weeks. So for some teams, 2-week sprint might work pretty well, and for some, 1-week sprint might do the job. So it depends on the project and the release cycle which the team is following. But yes, one important factor is you have to keep this duration of the sprint constant during the whole release. So going forward, I'll be using the term sprint. Sprint is nothing but iteration, short intervals wherein the team works together to deliver the software. So this is the life cycle of Scrum on a very high level. You have the product vision. So you list down everything based on that vision in a product backlog. So product backlog is nothing but a list of all all the user requirements which are needed to complete that particular product. After you have the product backlog, you have a sprint planning meeting. This is where the whole Scrum starts. In the sprint planning meeting, you pick up the top most prioritized requirements from the product backlog and you keep that in the sprint backlog. So sprint backlog is nothing but the requirements which are needed to be completed in that particular sprint. Once you have the sprint backlog ready, then the sprint starts. You follow that sprint with a daily Scrum cycle. And as I said earlier, the sprint duration can range from 1 to 4 weeks or 2 to 4 weeks. There are various guidelines, various books where they state it's 1 to 4 weeks, and some books states that it is 2 to 4 weeks. The whole idea is the duration should be kept small. After that, after the sprint duration is completed, you have a sprint review meeting. Sprint review meeting is nothing but it's kind of a demo session, show and tell session, wherein the team showcases all the work which they have done during the sprint to the product owner and gets feedback on the work they have done. After the sprint review meeting, you again follow the same cycle with the sprint planning again, but before that, there is one important meeting which is followed in Scrum, which is called as sprint retrospective meeting. Here the team sits together as whole and they understand what went well in the sprint, what could have been improvised, and what should be added in the whole process to make it better in the next sprint. So after the sprint retrospective, they follow the whole another cycle of sprint 2, and they incorporate the feedback which they have received from sprint retrospective, thus making sprint 2 a better one than sprint 1. So by sprint retrospective, you are optimizing the process. You are improving the whole process of Scrum. So this is the whole life cycle of Scrum. Now coming to the components of Scrum. The first component of Scrum is roles. We have 3 distinct roles in Scrum. The first one is the Scrum Master, then we have a product owner, and then we have the development team. All these 3 roles comprise together to form a Scrum team. So let's look into each of them. Product owner is similar to BA in traditional waterfall model, in a traditional project cycle. He's someone who is the subject matter expert with respect to the functional domain of the product. He sets the vision. He's the person who has direct interaction with the client, the stakeholders, and the customers. He gets the business. He is responsible for maximizing the business and the value which is delivered by the team. So he knows what is to be delivered, what he is knowledgeable and empowered and engaged. He knows what particular changes in the product is needed, which will add value to the customer. He is the person who is solely responsible for managing the product backlog, starting from the creation to maintenance to prioritization, everything. He is the one who decides what user requirements need to be delivered first in which sprint. And finally, one of the most important role of the product owner is he motivates the team and also celebrates success. And at the end, he is the one whom the team showcases their work in the sprint review. So he is the person who manages, who actually accepts and rejects the work done by the team in the sprint. So if you see here, as the picture depicts, You have the whole Scrum team. The Scrum team, you have the development team, then you have the Scrum Master and the product owner. As I said, all of these roles comprise of Scrum team. And there is another cycle of stakeholders which comprises of customers, product managements, business stakeholders. So if you see here, the product owner is the person who is directly interacting with the stakeholders and gets the business to the Scrum team. The requirements are gathered by the product owner from the stakeholders, and it is passed on to the Scrum team for the later on development. The second role, the most important role, is one of the Scrum Master. So in a traditional project cycle, the Scrum Master is similar to a project manager. He or she is a facilitator, and thus he's not having the whole and soul of the project. He's just an expert on Agile values and tries to make sure that the Agile values are imbibed in the team. He should possess the servant leadership quality. Well, servant leadership quality is one of the most important mantra of Agile. So whenever the team is facing any roadblocks or impediments in their daily work, it's the job of the Scrum Master to actually resolve that particular roadblock for the team so that the team works in a smooth flow. So as I said, he is a facilitator. So all the Scrum ceremonies, starting from the daily stand-ups, sprint planning, and all the various events and the ceremonies which are followed in the Scrum, the Scrum Master is the person who facilitates it. And he also makes sure that the whole Scrum concept or the Agile values are understood in the team. Then we have the development team. If you see here, we don't have just a tester or a developer or a QA in a development team. All of them together, they comprise of a development team. So there are no specific roles like, okay, this person is a tester, this person is a developer. You call them as a development team because the team works together. They are self-organizing in Scrum. If the need arises, the BA can do the work of a tester. So you don't have specific roles as such defined in the development team. They are cross-functional and self-organizing. By cross-functional, as I said earlier, a BA can do a work of a tester also. So they are cross-functional, thus adding value to the product which they are delivering. Self-organizing, they are empowered. They take ownership of their work. They are not relying on the management for a particular piece of work. So the optimal size of a development team, which the Scrum guideline states, is it should be 6 plus or minus 3. Because if it exceeds more than 9, then it is very hard to manage the Scrum team. The whole mantra is you have to have the Scrum team small enough to manage them effectively, and thus they're enabling them to work together. And as I said earlier, it recognizes no titles other than developer. So everybody in the team is a developer. So the main goal of a development team is to deliver high quality, potentially shippable increments after the sprint. Then the third component of Scrum are some artifacts. If you remember the product, the life cycle of Scrum, we had the product backlog. So the product backlog is nothing but an ordered list of everything that is needed to be delivered in that product. It's the list of all the user requirements. Single source of all requirements for the changes to be done. that or some extra features need which can add value to the product, you can actually add that particular requirement in the product backlog. So that's why we say it's a living document. It evolves over the time. Until the whole release of that product is completed, we say that it is a living document. It evolves, keeps changing during the whole sprint because people keep adding, people keep removing requirements based on the priorities in the market. From the product backlog, we derive the sprint backlog. So sprint backlog is the list of requirements which will be completed in that particular sprint. So sprint backlog of sprint 1 will contain the requirements which are to be developed by the team in sprint 1. So it is a subset of items from the product backlog which is selected for that particular sprint. The third artifact is increment. So increment is nothing but a potentially shippable product. It is sum of the product backlog items which is completed during the sprint and it is delivered to the customer. Then there is a concept of definition of done. Definition of done is nothing but a common understanding between the team and the product owner to make them sure that, okay, this particular requirement is completed. It's kind of a checklist which states, okay, if these checklists are completed, then this particular requirement is completed. So it includes all the activities and workflow items which are necessary to complete that particular requirement. So these are the artifacts in Scrum. And then the third component is the events or the ceremonies which we follow in Scrum. As I explained earlier, sprint is the heart of Scrum process. It is nothing but an iteration. It is a duration in which the team works together to deliver a potentially shippable product. And then we have the very first meeting of the sprint, which is the sprint planning meeting. The sprint planning meeting, you develop a plan for picking up the requirements from the product backlog in the sprint backlog. I will be explaining that further in the coming slides. Then when the sprint starts, you have the daily Scrum meetings. Daily Scrum meetings are nothing but a meeting to synchronize the activities of the whole development team. Then finally, at the end of the sprint, you have the sprint review meeting wherein you inspect and you showcase all the work which you have done in the sprint to the product owner. And finally, the last meeting, but not the least, the most important one in the Scrum is the sprint retrospective meeting, which is a meeting wherein the team inspects itself on what they did well and what could be improvised in the next upcoming sprint. So looking in detail, you have the sprint planning meeting. It is attended by the product owner, Scrum Master and the development team, and if needed, some other interested stakeholders. So the whole cycle goes on like you have the product backlog wherein you have all the user requirements listed based on the priority. So the topmost priority, topmost requirements are the ones which are of higher priority, which needs to be delivered to the customer on a priority basis. Then the sprint planning starts. The team sits together and they try to understand what product backlog items they can commit to in that particular sprint. And what is the sprint goal? This is delivered by the product owner. He specifies, okay, this is the need of the customer. They want this particular feature in market by this date. So then the team decides, okay, which requirements from the product backlog they can pick up from the product backlog into the sprint backlog. After that, they pick up the user requirements from the product backlog, and then you have the sprint backlog ready. Then the next phase of the sprint planning meeting is the team sits together and they understand. They actually split each requirements into various tasks. And for each task, they will identify how much time is needed for completion of that particular task. So this is the whole process of sprint planning meeting. Then comes the daily scrum. Daily scrum is not a status reporting meeting. It is to synchronize the activities of the development team. So if you have the status reporting meeting, you have many wonderful tools in market and you don't need the whole team at one place at the same time. It is kind of a team huddle wherein it gives a sense of belonging to the team, wherein every team member knows what the other person is doing. So every team member, they take turns in answering to 3 questions, which is what they did yesterday, what they will be doing today, and if they're facing any roadblocks or impediments in their working of that particular requirement. So they will give out the roadblocks and impediments, and it is the job of the Scrum Master to resolve them. So the duration of the sprint daily Scrum meeting should be limited to only 15 minutes. Because in 15 minutes you get an actual understanding of what the other person is working on. And later, after that, if you have to resolve those queries or some issues, then only the necessary people who are needed in the team, they can sit back and then they can continue with resolving it. And the other people can leave. So whole idea is to keep it short so that everybody is aware of what the other person is working. So there are some do's and don'ts of daily Scrum. So you give an idea of what you are working on and what you will be taking up in the coming day, and if you have facing any impediments or roadblocks or any risk. You don't start with the solutioning. You don't go ahead and try to find out ways to resolve that particular issues or impediments. And we don't encourage late arrivals. If somebody is coming late, it's okay. You have to continue this daily Scrum in the set time. Even if the Scrum Master is late, you have to continue with the Scrum meeting in the actual predefined time. And you're not supposed to change the meeting time or location frequently. There might be exceptions, but the rule is you should keep it constant. Then we have the sprint review meeting, which is a showcasing, demo, show and tell kind of a meeting. This meeting actually inculcates a lot of confidence in the team and the product owner, and it improves the morale of the team because the product owner accepts or rejects the work which is being done by the team. So the duration of this particular sprint review meeting is, if you have 1 week of a sprint duration, then the sprint review meeting should be set as 4 hours. So this is a time boxed event. As I said, all the events in Scrum are time boxed. So people who are attending this sprint review meeting are product owner, stakeholders, development team, and Scrum Master. So the structure is the development team, they demonstrate what they have developed in the whole sprint, and they get feedback from the product owner. So the product owner accepts and rejects the work. They give them feedback. Okay, this particular piece of work is what it was expected, or this particular piece of work needs some improvements. Then the last meeting of the whole sprint is the sprint retrospective meeting. It is one of the most important meeting. It is kind of a lesson learned meeting. I've seen many seasoned Scrum team which they missed this particular meeting. Actually, this adds very much value to the whole Scrum process because all the team members come together and they understand what they can, how they can optimize the whole process by getting feedback from every one of them. So here also they try to answer 3 questions, like some of the good stuff which they would like to continue doing in the next sprints, and some of the stuffs which they would stop doing. And if they have some ideas or innovative ways of implementing some particular process, then they will say, okay, we should start doing this particular piece of work. So it's nothing but you inspect the sprint with regards to people, process and tools. You identify what went well and what needs to be improved. And then the Scrum Master, they sit together along with the team, the whole Scrum team, and they create a plan for implementing that particular improvements in the next sprint. So this is an example of a 2-week Scrum cycle. So if you see here, on the Monday, we have the sprint planning meeting 1. So here the product owner and the whole team, the Scrum team and Scrum Master, they sit down and they understand what items from the product backlog they can pick in the sprint backlog. And then in the next part of sprint planning meeting is they divide the user stories into tasks and they come up with estimates of completion of that particular task. So this, on Monday you have the sprint planning meeting. Then starting from Tuesday you have the daily Scrum meeting, which goes on till the end, till the last Friday of the Scrum, the whole sprint, sorry. In between, you have the product backlog grooming meeting, if you see here. Product backlog grooming meeting is nothing but if there are some changes to be done in the product backlog, you make those changes. You add some requirements or you remove some requirements in the product from the product backlog. So you have the revised product backlog ready before the sprint 2 starts. And if you see here, on the last day of the sprint, on Friday, you have the sprint review meeting. Here the team demonstrates what they have done in that particular sprint to the product owner and gets the feedback from them. And immediately after the sprint review meeting, you have the sprint retrospective meeting. Here the team reviews how the sprint went well and what was wrong, and they identify areas for improvement. So this is the whole cycle of Scrum if you consider a 2-week sprint cycle. Many times you must have seen their Scrum boards. They are not actually Scrum boards. They are called as Kanban, visual management of the progress of work which you are doing. So you actually add one more framework, that is Kanban of Agile, and mix it with Scrum, and you use that in your day-to-day work. So this is called as Scrum or Kanban board, wherein daily after the daily Scrum meeting, the team updates the board. Like the product, the user requirements are listed in the small chits which you see here. These are some examples of the team which I have shown here. So this gives a clear visibility of the whole progress of the work which is done by the team, since it's updated daily. So we have not gone into the details of Scrum, like how to actually build the Scrum team, and there are actually detailed concepts of roles and responsibilities of Scrum Master, Product Owner, and Development Team. So we have just covered the fundamentals of Scrum. The whole detailed aspect which will be catering to the certification of Scrum will be covered in the upcoming classroom sessions, which will be organized by TechXpla. So this was just to give you an overview of the whole Scrum framework, why it is needed, and what are the actual things which are needed to make the whole Scrum work. So any
Hi, Ajit
question?
again. Yeah, Ajit again. If any questions, please ask it here under the question answer tab. And we have few other polls which I would simultaneously run through. Answer these polls. It will help us create better webinar experience